My name is Fred Brown, and I personally reside in New York. And I've been a respiratory therapist for pretty much about 25 years. And so when that's experience, I've, steadily grown somewhat discouraged by the resources that I have available to me to help my patients. I personally don't have any breathing problems that I know of, or significant breathing symptoms, and never have. But because of the field that I'm in, I'm always exposed to individuals who do. And my personality has always been one to try to seek to find ways of truly helping a person, opposed to just treating symptoms and sending them on their way, and they really have no improvement in their health. And so as a respiratory therapist, that's what kind of perked my interest in looking further into this field, whether it be on the internet or reading books and things of that nature. I enjoy working with my patients. I find a lot of satisfaction because when you're talking about breathing, you're really talking about life and death. And a lot of times, I'm in situations where a person's life is right in my hands when we're dealing with, an emergent situation. But then when you have a non-emergent situation, maybe an acute respiratory distress or asthmatic, I always have felt shorthanded as far as having true available resources to significantly help them. And that's why I've always been interested in learning more ways and felt that there was something out there that could significantly impact the health of the patient.
How did you come across the Buteyko Breathing Normalization method?
Well, it was during my search on the internet, just browsing, and I came across the Breathing Center website, as well as the Breathing to Heal book. And about a year ago, that really perked my interest, and I started reading that book while I continued training to be like a health coach and things of this nature. Then after my training as a health coach, then I really turned my attention to this breathing method and picked up the book again and wanted to really look into a little further and seeing how it really would apply to not only my own health, because like I said, I didn't have any significant breathing problems, but I did know that there were some underlying, energy issues or what have you. So I wanted to see, one, what it can do for myself, and as well as how can I apply this particularly to my patients, or in the field, in the hospital field, or as well as outside.
Mm-hmm. And when you became familiar with the Buteyko Breathing Normalization method, mm-hmm. What did you think about it? Because I assume that it greatly contradicted everything you learned for 25 years as a respiratory therapist.
Well, that's interesting that you say that, because there's one key element that perked my interest that I would say made me really rethink a lot of the things that I was taught. And that was, which is commonly taught, is that CO2 is a waste gas. That information alone really kind of put me back on my heels, and not as far as rejecting it, but perked my interest even more, because if there was some concrete evidence or facts or credence to that, I wanted to know more, because that's really life-changing and a totally different way of approaching addressing health as well as breathing issues. So that alone was one thing that, is a major shift in one's thought process as far as approaching health in general. And I thought that was very fascinating.
And for how long have you been studying the Buteyko Breathing Normalization method? And what do you think about it now?
Well, it started about a year ago when I was first exposed. During that time, I kind of dabbled in just the information, just educating myself. And then pretty much about a month to 2 months ago, that's when I decided to take further action and get actually training. Because I wanted to see firsthand, even though I didn't have any significant breathing problems, I wanted to know in which way, in which way it can help myself. My main issues were energy, as well as I had, not as restful sleep. Even though I slept well and could fall asleep very easily, especially as a result of working the night shift overnights for like 13 years at the beginning of my career. That really was a time period in my life that kind of shifted my sleeping habits. And yes, I can fall asleep fairly easy, but I didn't feel truly rested. And so not only the new approach that it spoke about in the Breathing to Heal book, but also the interest and curiosity to see what it can do for me caused me to take further action. And I have to say, after getting some information and getting some training from right away I noticed my sleep. That first night when applying the information that I learned, I found that my sleep was much more restful and I felt further refreshed the following day. And that to me was very exciting, because I have to say all the holistic as well as non-holistic things that I've done, which never had that kind of impact.
What was your positive maximum pause when you started, and what is it now? What is the highest you have now?
Sure. Now, when I first started and I learned about how to measure my positive maximum pause, it was 15 to 20. On an average, usually my range right now is 35 to 45, but I've measured as high as a minute and 15 seconds. And that was after applying some of the principles and practicing some of the training that I've received, in the last 2 months.
Thank you. And learning about the Buteyko method, how did it change what you do every day in hospitals, helping various patients as a respiratory therapist?
Sure. Well, it's definitely made me much more aware of the importance of CO2. So based on what I've learned so far, I've been trying to apply some of those principles and methods in the hospital to, help my patients. And I can recall one incident where I had one of my asthmatic patients who was in the ICU, who was in significant respiratory distress. Hence, that's why she was in the ICU. Typically gave your breathing treatments to try to help her breathing, calm her breathing down, decrease the wheezing. But I decided to just give her, just a little information as far as giving her control over her breath and suggesting to her to try to calm it down and work with the medication. And to my surprise, within an hour, I asked her, what was your level of difficulty from 1 to 10? before taking my suggestion on applying some of the, relaxation breathing methods. And she said it was an 8. And I said, and this was roughly about 45 minutes to an hour later, asked her, what is it now? And she said a 2. Mm-hmm. And once again, also to my surprise, we work 12-hour shifts. But within that shift, she was discharged from the ICU and sent to a regular floor. Whereas in the very beginning of the shift, there was no way that she looked like she was at all close to being discharged. And so that was, I guess, my first experience outside of my own experience, seeing just some of the basic principles being applied and the significant results and the quick results, And so that was very exciting.
So what exactly did you advise that patient?
I had asked her to focus on her breathing, number one, try to relax her breathing and decrease it by, say, about 10%. And I told her not to force, the decreasing it, but try to do it just naturally by focusing on relaxing your respiratory muscles, your diaphragm, and your, upper stomach area. Also, I saw that she was talking on the phone during the treatment or a little bit after. And I advised her, I said, listen, I'd like to try something. I want to try to improve and build up some key components in your lungs that can help your breathing symptoms. So I'm going to ask you for a period of time, try to refrain from talking, try to refrain from using the phone, because when you do so, you'll decrease some of those key components in your lungs that we want to help build up to decrease some of your symptoms. And she agreed. I saw her, she right away closed the phone, and I advised her also make sure that she's breathing through her nose when not taking the breathing treatment, which usually the breathing treatment lasts about 10 minutes. But I asked her, breathe in and out through your nose and not through your mouth. And got her compliance to do that. And those simple techniques really changed her whole, transitioned her out of the ICU. And that was directly from my training that I received.
Do you think Buteyko breathing normalization could be helpful to respiratory patients in hospitals?
Absolutely. Mainly because it's simple, it's practical, and it's easy to remember. And I find those are keys to just about any modality or mode of healing working. Has to be practical, has to be simple, and easy to apply. And I find that way a person can be sustainable. Otherwise, if it's too complex, if it's too complicated, if it takes too long to see results, typically a person won't keep up with it. And I see right away that's the power in the Buteyko breathing method, is that it incorporates those key components.
Do you have an aspiration to become a Buteyko practitioner to teach breathing normalization?
Yes, and the reason being is because, like I said before, the application is very simple, and it works. I'm a person that's really about results. And I find that's also what has attracted me to, the holistic profession, is because the lack of results, that I've seen, using allopathic medicine and just treating symptoms and really being about not health care, but about just symptom care. And to me, that's a vast difference, just treating symptoms opposed to truly the person's health. And that's what's always attracted me to holistic aspects of health, because you're dealing more with the whole person, not just with symptoms and feeling, oh, if I can calm your symptoms and then send you home, I've done my job.
Let's imagine that a lot of people with breathing difficulties are listening to you right now all over the world. People who wheeze, people who cough, people who feel that they're suffocating because they don't get enough air. What advice would you give them as a respiratory therapist who is very familiar now with Buteyko breathing method?
One, I think foundationally is learning that our mouths are for eating, and our nose is for breathing. And oftentimes, even as a respiratory therapist in my 25 years, that's never been addressed. It's always been, do I breathe in through my nose, breathe out through my mouth, or breathe in through my, it's always been sort of like not concrete. You read one book or you speak to one person and they have all different perspectives. But the breathing Buteyko method has solidified the information for me. And that is, you should always breathe in and out through your nose. That's number one. So that way you can build up the CO2, in your lungs. Whereas, like I said, very different than what I was oftentimes taught, that CO2 is just a waste gas and your O2 is really what's significant. Well, it's really just the opposite. The delivery of O2 to your organs and your cells throughout the body is dependent on the level of CO2. So that's why you want to begin to start not breathing through your mouth, exhaling or inhaling, but breathing through your nose. So that way you can decrease the volume of ventilation, the volume of the air that you're breathing out of your lungs, hence losing the CO2. So I think that alone is very important. The other thing is addressing mouth breathing, typically at night. I think if you can focus on those two initial things, you will begin to see, results. Breathing in your, not breathing, being a mouth breather during the day, and especially not breathing a mouth breather at night. That's when you lose most of your CO2.